Heck Mega Shock Neo Geo.
SNK.
Here's a quick history lesson about SNK. SNK was founded in 1973. It was known as, excuse my poor pronunciation, Shin Nihon Kikaku Corporation, and was originally a stock company. Then Ichiki Kawasaki, the founder, realized video games were becoming popular, so he decided to shift the company to arcade video games. And they were pretty good at it. So much so they were able to cram in a bunch of arcade games in one singular cabinet, which was called the Neo Geo MVS. Then SNK thought, God, wouldn't it be cool if we could play these arcade games at home without any downgrades? So in 1990, SNK made the most powerful game system, the Neo Geo. You have your little SNES Mario system? Fuck you, we got baseball stars. And just the one bad thing, the one little glaring issue was the price of the console. It was a bit pricey, and the games cost this much, but they didn't care because they were SNK. How could we possibly mess this up, they said. Fuck it, let's make an amusement park while we're at it. And it was a financial failure, and around the same time, the magazine that advertised SNK games the most was taken down by Shueisha. So they had nothing except fighting games. Oh wait, never mind. Fighting games were not popular anymore in the 2000s. But at least they had a collaboration with Capcom, which most of the sales went to Capcom. So SNK filed for bankruptcy, but Kawasaki made a company called Playmore, which managed to hire back most of SNK's employees and obtain all of their properties. However, they were still stuck to only re-releasing their own games on newer consoles, mobile games, and producing...
You fucking kidding me?
That was until 2016, after a bunch of business stuff I don't understand, SNK was able to focus on video game making once again. So there's your quick history lesson. SNK is now thriving better than ever, so why don't we look at some action games they produced in the past? Because Lord knows they made a shit ton of them back in their heyday. First, we'll describe what an action game is. According to Google, Among Us is an action game, but that's stupid. So, an action game in this video is when you're blasting people, aliens, machines, or what have you with guns, spaceships, fists, swords, or any other kind of weapon. We will begin with the games that are in the SNK 40th anniversary, and side note, I'll be playing the arcade versions of these games and not the console ports that are available in this collection. So let's start with the first game on the list, which is Alpha Mission, which was released in November 1985 in Japan. Alpha Mission is where you control a ship called the Cid against the enemy who are called Star 7 Alliance. Apparently. This game is super short. Well, I think so, because this is hard. Even with the built-in rewind function, I gave up very easily. You're just so slow. Oh my god. If I wanted to be this slow, I would have edited a YouTube video. Put a laugh track in there, come on. You also get upgrades by blasting some cannons and blocks with missiles, but to be honest, I don't know what they do, nor do I care enough to look it up. It's just your average space shooter with nothing really special. It doesn't have that SNK spunk yet, so let's continue forth. The next game up is Tank 3 or just Tank in Japan. Believe it or not, this game actually helped SNK out with their first time facing bankruptcy. According to Koji Obata, the creator of Ikari Warriors and who helped develop Tank, stated, "Hey, if we're going to bankrupt, let's do something crazy and go out with a bang." The company at the time only had about 20 employees when the year before they had more than 100. So Obata and 4 other developers worked sleepless nights to get this game done. And what we got from it was Tank. This is apparently a spiritual predecessor to the Ikari Warriors, so that means this guy right here in the tank is Ralph Jones. Apparently. Nobody told me, I just kinda got thrust into the game. Speaking of the actual game, I am glad to say that Tank is a much better game than Alpha Mission. It's faster and the upgrades actually do something. L increases the rate of fire, K kills all enemies or make more enemies appear, E refills health while N refills all your health. When you collect J, it gets rid of all of your upgrades. Which would make sense because the game got a lot less fun at a certain point and I didn't know why. There's also P, F, S, and V that apparently let you use stuff like airstrikes, but I didn't know this until I read the SNK wiki. So I could have passed this part of the game and got into more detail how this game plays. Oops. Ikari Warriors released in 1986 and was originally going to be based off Rambo 2, but they couldn't get the rights. However, SNK did manage to get in contact with Sylvester Stallone, but when they were finally able to talk to Stallone, the game was already popular in the States under the Ikari name, so they decided to keep it as an original game. So instead of playing John Rambo, we get to play as Ralph Jones and Clark Still. Wait, why do they look like that? Ikari Warriors was famous for having the option for 2 people to play at the same time, which was only a thing because a law at the time did not let adult businesses open for 24 hours, so SNK decided to make Ikari 2-player to get more money from their customers. Ikari Warriors also had something called rotary joysticks, which pretty much helped players at the arcade to react faster because of how little pressure you would have needed to apply to the joysticks, so something like a quick flick was enough. But I wouldn't know how that would feel because I played this on a PS3 controller, so I didn't have the same feel than those who played this game at the arcades. I also had no one to play with, so it's just Ralph Jones for this adventure. But I can also tell that the game would be a lot smoother to play with rotary joysticks because sometimes I would get caught on the controls, which would lead me to die. Also, because it's an arcade game and they wanted people to spend their money on, the game has pretty unfair aspects. Invisible landmines, enemies, grenades have a much bigger hitbox than your own grenades, etc. It's kinda annoying. But I would assume this game would be a lot more fun if you had a second player because already with one player this game is already crazy to keep track of. And there's friendly fire on at all times, and that sounds like a good excuse to tell a friend to go fuck themselves. There's also your usual upgrades, better guns, everyone on screen dies, etc. But I'm gonna be honest,
I found upgrades not the most useful things ever.
Whoa! Show some guts! You can't escape me!
Warriors 2 Victory Road. I don't know how we got from this to this, but here we are. For whatever reason, the sequel has a demonic realism vibe to it, while also making Ralph and Clark anime boys, and I prefer this one way better than the first one. The weapons consist of a flamethrower, a pea shooter, grenades that are actually good to use, and my favorite, a magical sword that deflects all projectiles and can shoot bullets. You can also get a cool RoboCop armor, though it does go away after a while if you don't get hit. While playing the game, you will face these green plates that will suck you in to fight a mini-boss, and these bosses are a bit wacky, but they can also be ignored if you move around it correctly. The enemy designs are just so cool, especially the final boss that's just, this. Anyways, you beat the boss, you get a text, game over, next game. I'll be covering both Bermuda Triangle and World Wars as they are literally almost the same game. Reuse assets, powers, controls, maps, but only changing a few sprites here and there. And World Wars has the better soundtrack by a long shot. Shout out to Kenny, whoever the that is. Now, Guerrilla Wars is a much more interesting game. First of all, the second player is Fidel Castro and the first player is Che Guevara. Yeah, the guy you would see on a poster in your history teacher's class. The only reason why the game's about Guevara is because the president of SNK asked, "Hey, do you know who Che Guevara is? He fought in some wars a long time ago. Why don't you look him up?" The SNK president at the time was really weird. SNK actually worried that the game might be controversial in the West because of the Cuban War and anti-communism. So they changed the name from Guevara to Guerrilla War, make the tanks have stars, and change some of the dialogue. But how does the actual gameplay feel? I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I prefer this over the first Ikari Warriors. It's just more satisfying to move around and shoot the enemies. The graphics are also just a bit more appealing to look at, and this game is much less bullshit than Ikari. There's also this rescuing prisoners mechanic, but that's just there for the high score if you care about that. But that's pretty much it. Other than the final level where you're storming the capital and there's 50 tanks you have to destroy with multiple grenades, and the final boss being complete horseshit where you have to die 20 times to beat him, but yes, it's a fun game, I swear.
Give out of the terror, fresh kangaroo era, ill rhyme slayer from the 60s era.
Time Soldiers, another top-down shooter, but this time you time travel to save your companions. Places like Rome, Prehistoric, World War II, the future, etc. There isn't much to talk about this game except that it's kinda open world? I mean, you can't travel freely, but when you're making your way in a level, there are these portals that you can jump into at any point of the game at your own volition. And these portals send you to different time periods. But I'm gonna be honest, once I jumped into the wrong portal, I just rewinded because I didn't want to waste my time and just beat the game. But I didn't even beat the game because I got burned out. I should have probably not played this whole entire collection in one day. Oh, thank God there's a new type of genre in this collection. But this game sucks. POW was SNK's response to games like Final Fight, and apparently this game was popular in the arcades. I don't know how, considering your hitbox is like 6 pixels, but okay. You have to position yourself just at the right place to register a hit. I'm all for putting the option to headbutt people in your video games, I think that's sick as fuck. But I wanted this. Not this. Beastbusters, on the other hand, is actually super fun, even if for some reason I decided to play with a controller and not a mouse. But like with most of these games, it's much better to experience in the arcade. I mean, look at this. It looked like it would have been so much fun to use the light guns to shoot down the zombies. Speaking of the light gun, this wasn't SNK's first light gun game. That would be a game called Mechanized Attack, and that's just Arnold, come on. According to Toshiyuki Naki, one of the head designers in SNK at the time, stated that the biggest struggle in developing Beastbusters was getting the scaled graphics to look good. Being a pseudo 3D game, we wanted to make players feel like the enemies were getting closer and closer, but we didn't really have adequate sprite zooming functionality, so it was a lot of difficult work to get them looking right. We ended up making multiple sprites for every character, at small, mid, and close-up distances. And this game really shows their hard work, because at the time this was for sure their most goriest game they released. The sprite work is just so amazingly well detailed, especially for 1989, and were expertly crafted to make the enemies look like they were getting closer to the players. I usually complain that there's too many things happening on the screen, but the clutterness benefits the game. The game is very lenient on the hitboxes, and you always have grenades that clear up most enemies on the screen. It's also not a real big deal if you game over, because you just start when you left off and not from the beginning of the level, or God forbid, the beginning of the game. But anyways, the final level is a boss rush, and then you fight a and then you fight a blob, and then the game ends. Ikari Warriors 3: The Rescue, the final game in the series where these two men are born to fight. Here they come, and this game fucking sucks. It literally has all the problems of POW and then some, because for some reason they decided to make the enemies take twice the damage than they should. The biggest offender of these are the Polnareff dudes who take about a whole minute to defeat for just one being on screen. God forbid, there's other enemies who easily beat the piss out of you. God forbid even further if you have to fight 2 of these dudes at the same time. I pretty much gave up on trying to actually play the game and just use my invincible frames to do damage. Prehistoric Isle is somehow our first side-scroller shooter in our list of games, and boy, it sure be a fun one. It's 1930 and you're in a 1930s biplane shooting dinosaurs and cavemen on an island. The controls are very smooth. There are only 2 upgrades in this one, being speed, which increases speed, and the other being power, which gives your plane a pod, which is like another gun. You can switch the pod in 8 different directions, which can shoot bombs, bounce shots, overhead shots, etc. It's a pretty fun mechanic until you lose it, because death means you'll lose the upgrade, and just like in real life, you will die at some point. Anyhow, you kill the final boss, which is a T-Rex, and then you leave the island to tell the world you're finding. Sorry, search and rescue, and we're finally gonna finish the games in this collection. And oh my god, that's the SNK Gore I've been looking for. You can roll and fire at the same time, and man, this is sick. But the move actually sucks. And your guy moves so slow. If this got a turbo edition, this game would honestly be so fun to play. For God's sakes, there's just a straight up James Cameron alien in this game. There's other weapons you can use, but once I found out you can just roll past the enemies until the final boss, I kinda just gave up on the game. I really did want to like it, but sadly, I gotta give it a...
What? A 1 out of 10! A total epic fail!
Let's jump 5 years ahead to 1995 with Pulsar on the Neo Geo, and look at these graphics. Does this look like a 1995 game home console to you? We gotta get hyped. The cute anime girl is running to her CGI spaceship. Let's go, god damn it, this game is hard. Look, I wouldn't mind if I died and had to use a continue, but no. This has checkpoints, and if you die once, you start at that checkpoint. I wouldn't really mind this, but the game still has an arcade game design. I already bought your game, SNK. You don't have to shake more coins out of me. It took me 43 minutes just to finish this last part of this level, and I still didn't beat the bastard. But hey, if you find these challenging games fun, I'd say give it a whirl. Shock Troopers, and oh boy, how happy I was when I found this. It's like Metal Slug but top down, and the controls are so good. It's so satisfying to blast the enemies. Every character in this game actually plays differently, and each of the troopers have their own special weapon. There's Milky, who commits war crimes with her napalm. I'll be honest, I only really played Milky and Mary B because, look man, I had no choice. You can actually choose where you can fight, either in the mountains, jungle, or valley. And it's pretty cool because they're actually different levels and not just a copy and paste. So I took the jungle route, and for the first mission, it's more like a mountain range with trees, but either way, it's a fun, simple level. But after that, you get a cutscene with a guy named Leader and a girl named Celia. So that happens, and then you ride on motorcycles, and that's fun, and then you go into the actual jungle, then another cutscene happens, but it's not too important. Blah 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 blah, you fight these weird claw dudes, big guy gets mad. Train, choo choo! Then the final level is always the airplane where you fight the leader guy, then he falls off, and then... Celia reads out her letter. Blazing Star, the sequel to Pulsar, and it's so much easier than its predecessor, and thank the Lord for it. Because it's easier, you don't have to memorize every damn pixel on the screen, so the gameplay is much faster. When I think of a side-scroller shoot 'em up, this is the type of gameplay I am looking for. Fast-paced, constantly shooting, no breathing room, just mash the shoot button until you reach the end of the level. The director of Pulsar actually told the developers, make an easy STG with a charge shot that anyone can clear. Usually, I'm not down for dumbing down mechanics so people can win, but I'm fine with it here, because they just made it into a completely different game than the previous iteration, hence why it isn't just called Pulsar 2. Instead of only having one ship to control, you have the choice of 5 ships, and they all shoot their shots differently. I played as JB, and for whatever reason I thought I was locked into that one character the entire playthrough, so the gameplay only has JB. But hey, JB plays really fun, and apparently the developers say that he's a good beginner character. His charge shot is a close-up spray of energy and really is good if you're being surrounded. Everything in this game, in my opinion, is a huge step up from Pulsar. Even the stuff like the backgrounds were improved. Definitely the best side-scroller shoot 'em up in the games I'm covering in this video. But now we're back to the Shock Trooper series with Shock Trooper 2, Second Squad, and it's not as good as the first one. But it's still pretty good. The cast in Second Squad are a lot more colorful than the squad in the first Shock Troopers. You got Alex Yeek, Himbo, Hot Blonde Girl, and Tomboy. But now I gotta choose. Come on, this isn't fair. I'll use you in the thumbnail. So Lulu is who I'll be controlling in this playthrough. And right from the start, you can tell the sprite work is phenomenal. Not saying the first game didn't have good visuals, but this game really shows the SNK specialty in sprite art. Like even Lulu's idle animation is bursting with energy. I think the sprite work is too good because I don't know if it's because of my PC or the port of this game, but this game chugs. And that sucks because it really did soil my fun at times. There's also no multiple paths, just 5 levels. There's surprisingly a lot of fake outs in this game. You think this guy's the villain, but then he dies, so this guy's the villain, but then he gets shot by the actual villain who looks like a blonde snake. So we kill him, the end. Alrighty, we are finally at the final game in this video, and it's Sengoku 3. I don't know, they didn't give them for free for the Twitch Prime Games month thing, so too bad if you're a fan of those. But hey, it's a pretty fun beat 'em up game. My only real issue is the hitboxes are a bit weird, but it's not horrible like POW. You can also do combos in this game, and it was really fun to discover combo routes with each character, and this time I actually did try each character out. Kagetsura is the overall guy, while Falcon is a faster guy but with a shorter range. Kurenai is kinda lame, but Kongo has a big pillar and can pretty much command grab enemies, and that's fun. I enjoyed all their gameplays evenly except Okuni, you suck. Oh yeah, you can unlock these two later, and it was pretty cool to see these guys who were bosses earlier become playable characters. But by far my favorite guy was Bayaki. He has this Sharkram as his weapon, but the coolest thing he has is this demon. It's just a combo extender, but it looks dope. It does take a while to get used to the controls, but once you do, it's a fun time. A fun beat 'em up game and the sprites look great, and that's the end of the video. Bye-bye! Oh right, Metal Slug, the SNK action game. Well, that's gonna be the next video, dummy. Actually, probably the one after that. I don't know. It's gonna come out, I swear. Metal Slug is such a huge franchise, I can't let it just be a few paragraphs in this video. So stay tuned, or if you're watching this 5 years from now, you can watch it now.
The world